Hello, you're watching the English News Edition with me, Karim Zachary, coming to you live from Algiers on All 24 News. These are your headlines. At least 52 people, including 5 children, have been killed and nearly 100 wounded in a rocket attack near a railway station in Kramatorsk, eastern Ukraine. European Union leaders visited Bucha, a town in the west of Kiev, where hundreds of civilians were killed by Russian forces. Pakistani parliamentarians have been violently questioning at the opening of the session, which should see Prime Minister Imran Khan overthrown by a motion of censors. A Palestinian in the occupied West Bank refugee camp of Jenin was shot dead by Zionist forces. 13 other Palestinians were wounded in the attack. Police used tear gas and water cannons on hundreds of university students demonstrating near the Sri Lankan parliament in Colombo. At least 52 people, including 5 children, have been killed and nearly 100 wounded in a rocket attack on railway station in Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian officials accused Russia for the attack, saying it took place as civilians were at the station in an attempt to evacuate to safer parts of the country, while Russia denied any involvement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "We expect a firm and international response to this war crime."
Every major state in the world has already condemned Russia's attack on Kramatorsk. We expect a firm and international response to this war crime, like the Bucha massacres, like many other Russian war crimes. Missile fire at Kramatorsk must be held back by the court, and that will happen.
European Union leaders visited Bucha, a town in the west of Kiev, where hundreds of civilians were killed by Russian troops. Let's follow this report by Nabil Khazili.
2 top European Union officials paid a visit to Ukraine on Friday to express support with the country after Russian military withdrew from the area around Kiev. During a visit to the village where scientific investigators began exhuming victims from a mass grave, von der Leyen appeared obviously disturbed by what she observed in the village, where Ukrainian officials claim Russian forces massacred hundreds of civilians. President of the European Commission handed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a questionnaire that might serve as the basis for an application to join the EU. Many countries in Eastern Europe support Ukraine's membership in the EU, but senior Western officials are hesitant.
Ukraine belongs to the European family. We've heard your request loud and clear. And today we're here to give you a first positive answer. In this envelope, dear Volodymyr, there is an important step towards EU membership.
I'm very grateful for your visit today and trip to Bucha. It is a very strong signal that Ukraine and the European Union are together in the struggle for justice, dignity, and the value of our lives.
During the conference, Zelensky reiterated his desire for tougher Russian sanctions.
I ask you to help us with the sanctions. They must only increase, otherwise, Russia will not listen to anyone.
The EU is about to impose a ban on Russian coal imports, and a possible second step of prohibiting oil deliveries will be debated on Monday. New penalties were also accepted by EU leaders, prohibiting the import of billions of dollars worth of wood, chemicals and other products from Russia. However, Zelensky believes the restrictions should be harsher. Ursula von der Leyen and Josep Borrell are the most senior European delegation to visit Kiev since the beginning of the Russian military operation, and their visit aimed at providing moral and financial support to Zelensky.
And that was Miriam Zian reporting. The southeastern Ukrainian city of Odessa has announced an imposed weekend curfew. Odessa's regional military administration said the decision was taken due to the last events in Kramatorsk and over a missile strike threat in the city. The curfew will start from 9 p.m. on April 9th to 6 a.m. on April 11th. Ukraine has retaken Chernihiv in the north from Russian soldiers. Residents are concerned, alleging a rocket strike in the east killed dozens of people on Friday, amid fear to be targeted again. Queue for food, diapers, drinking water, and other basic needs. The Ukrainian city held under siege for a month by Russian forces and say they expect to be targeted again. According to local officials, many residents of the city fled and hundreds of people died due to the alleged shelling. The European Union formally adopted new sweeping sanctions against Russia, including bans on the import of coal, wood, chemicals, and other products, which were estimated to slash at least 10% of total imports from Moscow. The measures also prevent many Russian vessels and trucks from accessing the EU, further crippling trade, and will ban all transactions with 4 Russian banks, including VTB. The ban on coal, the first the EU has so far imposed on any energy import from Russia, will be fully effective from the second week of August. Among the new sanctions against Moscow, Japan announced that it will give up on Russian coal and that he was also going to expel 8 Russian diplomats. These announcements follow a series of similar measures in Europe, with Ukraine's allies increasing pressure on Moscow following allegations of massacres of civilians.
Russian troops have killed civilians and attacked nuclear facilities, which is a serious violation of international humanitarian law. These are unforgivable war crimes. We will ban the importation of Russian coal. We will adopt alternatives by gradually reducing imports. We will reduce our energy dependence on Russia.
During a press conference alongside with the British Prime Minister, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said his country is doing everything it can to reduce its dependence on Russian hydrocarbons, while the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said leaders discussed collaboration on energy security.
Doing all we can, and we are doing a lot. I think it is a very strong decision that we took to go away from the use of fossil resources. We invest into becoming the country that will be just using renewables for the electricity we know and for the energy supply we need.
Today we have agreed to maximise the potential of the North Sea and collaborate on energy security and on renewables, where Germany and the UK lead the way in new technology. We cannot transform our respective energy systems overnight.
The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations announced a 12.6% increase in their food price index for March compared to the one of February. This rate is the highest level since the index was established in 1990, adding more fear for a global food crisis.
Many countries around the world know events such as these, protests and anger over high prices, and over an economic crisis that keeps worsening, with governments finding difficulties to recover from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic on their economies. In the fastest rate of increase in 14 years, world food prices have soared by almost 13% last month compared to February, reaching an all-time high in March.
So what we are observing today in the month of March is that the food price index has increased to 159.3 points, which is an increase of 17.9 points with respect to February.
The conflict in Ukraine has sparked fears of a food crisis. The two countries in the conflict, Russia and Ukraine, together account for around 30% and 20% respectively of global wheat and maize exports. But now, Ukraine's ports are closed, and many vessels are avoiding a region which accounts for about a quarter of all grains trade.
The countries that used to import from Ukraine, around 50 countries import 30% of their cereals from Ukraine and Russia Federation, and of those, 26 import 50%. But there is one more effect, which is very important for us, which is the access to fertilizers. And outside of the prices of food, the prices of fertilizers has been going substantially up. And why is this so important? Is because it will affect the production of the next season. And that's where we are really concerned.
The surge in cost of food is mostly felt in poor countries, where a big share of people's budget goes for basic needs and groceries. An analysis published by the Center for Global Development shows that 40 million additional people are pushed into extreme poverty due to the current global situation, while the United Nations has warned that prices could still climb even more.
Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said that it was agreed to open 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate residents from besieged areas in Ukraine today. She added that the planned corridors include one for evacuating residents by private means of transport from the city of Mariupol. Safe corridors are announced daily in Ukraine, and Russia and Ukraine accuse each other of disrupting the evacuation of civilians. Russia has closed the domestic branches of human rights defenders Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, according to a statement issued by the Ministry of Justice on Friday. This announcement comes at the height of a domination struggle between Russia and the West over Ukraine, where Moscow has launched what it called a special military operation. French President Emmanuel Macron confirmed Friday that his country is collecting evidence that proves the war crimes of the Russians in Ukraine, where atrocities against civilians have been attributed to Moscow, which the latter denies.
Now I want us to collect the evidence. That's why, in a very precise way, my role is to be useful, and therefore we have sent gendarmes and magistrates in cooperation to help. But we need to collect the evidence of the guilt of Russian soldiers, and the identity of these Russian soldiers. We, the French services in collaboration with others, succeeded in dismantling the lie of Russian state, which consisted in saying that it was not Russia, and we were able by the satellite images to show that it was the Russian army who did it. So I think honestly, with taking the maximum precautions, I can say that these are war crimes of the Russians.
Je peux dire que ce sont des crimes de guerre des Russes.
The US will deploy a Patriot missile system to Slovakia, a NATO member state in Central Europe that borders the western tip of Ukraine. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced on Friday. US European Command will reposition the system, which can shoot down incoming missiles and will be manned by US troops, Austin said in a statement. On the other hand, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Edward Heger, has confirmed that his country has transferred its only Soviet-era S-300 PMU long-range surface-to-air missile system to the Ukrainian military in return to US Patriot. Ketanji Brown Jackson, first black woman on the US Supreme Court, delivered a powerful message of hope in divided America to the White House, saying that it took 232 years before a black woman was chosen to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States.
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman of African descent, became a judge on the U.S. Supreme Court. Celebrating the historic event in the White House, Ketanji said that it took 232 years before a black woman was chosen to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States.
It has taken 232 years and 115 prior appointments for a black woman to be selected to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States. But we've made it.
President Joe Biden in turn praised the Supreme Court for what he called real change in American history, adding that this will let sunshine on so many young women, young black men, and so many minorities.
This is not only a sunny day, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. This is going to let so much sunshine on so many young women, so many young black women, so many minorities, that it's real. It's real. We're going to look back, nothing to do with me. We're going to look back and see this as a moment of real change in American history.
The U.S. Senate made history last week by confirming Jackson's appointment to the post. After a vote of 53 to 47, the result of the vote was announced by the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who chaired the session, noting that the appointment had been approved.
And this nomination is confirmed.
Pakistani parliamentarians have been violently questioning at the opening of the session, which should see Prime Minister Imran Khan overthrown by a motion of censure. The President of the National Assembly adjourned the sitting early in the afternoon after 30 minutes of stormy exchanges.
Take up this agenda item and no other item. That is the intent of this order. You cannot deviate from this, and therefore I conclude my submissions. I will request you, please go for the voting on the resolution. Thank you very much.
A Palestinian in the occupied West Bank refugee camp of Jenin was shot dead by Zionist forces. 13 other Palestinians were wounded in the attack. The Palestinian Wafa news agency reported that the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attack and stressed the dangers of continuing the repeated incursions into Al-Aqsa Mosque and the provocative actions of extremist settler groups. After 2 years of restrictions because of the coronavirus pandemic, Saudi Arabia has finally raised the number of Hajj pilgrims from inside and outside the kingdom to 1 million in 2022. A statement released by the Saudi Ministry of Hajj and Umrah said that Hajj is open to those under 65 years of age who have received approved COVID-19 vaccinations by the Saudi Ministry of Health. For the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia has limited the Hajj, or as known as Muslim pilgrimage, to domestic pilgrims due to the pandemic. The head of the new Yemeni Presidential Council, Rashad al-Alimi, pledges to end the war and establish a comprehensive and urgent peace process. The president of Yemen, exiled in Riyadh, handed over his powers on Thursday to a new council to govern his war-torn country, which is a major upheaval within the coalition fighting the Houthi rebels.
We hope that this blessed council will be a turning point in the process of restoring the state and its institutions, and realizing the aspirations of our people for security, stability, and development. The Presidential Council promises our Yemeni people to work to end the war and establish a comprehensive and urgent peace process. This council is a council of peace, but it is also a council of defense, force, and unity, whose mission is to defend the sovereignty of the country and protect its citizens.
At least 16 people killed in an attack on a military site in Burkina Faso's north-central province. A statement issued by the Burkina Faso army said on Saturday that the military unit stationed in the San Matinga region was targeted by armed terrorist groups. The statement added that 12 soldiers and 4 civilian army volunteers were killed and 21 soldiers were wounded in the attack. Police used tear gas and water cannons on hundreds of university students demonstrating near the Sri Lanka's parliament in Colombo after Sri Lanka's central bank announcement of raising its key policy rate by 7% due to the economic crisis.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced on Friday that it will raise its key policy rate by a record 7 percentage points in an attempt to contain inflation and growing popular discontent on the island due to the economic crisis. Rising prices, but also food shortages and power cuts, have led to a wave of popular demonstrations across Sri Lanka, with calls for the departure of President. In Colombo, the police used tear gas to disperse a procession of several hundred students. Among the president's great supporters, the Sri Lanka Central Bank, for its part, announced in a statement its decision to raise the benchmark borrowing rate to 14.5%, a record increase of 7 percentage points, with the aim of stabilizing the rupee, which lost more than 35% of its value in 1 month. On the other hand, the deposit rate was increased to 13.5%. The monetary institution again justified the measure by the risk of worsening inflation, which according to official figures reached 18.7% on average and up to more than 25% for food products. Finance Minister Ali Sabri told Reuters on Saturday that Sri Lanka will need about $3 billion in external assistance with the next 6 months to help restore supplies of essential items, including fuel and medicines, to manage a severe economic crisis. The island nation of 22 million people has been hit by prolonged power cuts, with trucks, fuel and other items running short, bringing angry protesters out to the streets and putting President Gotabaya Rajapaksa under mounting pressure.
According to government data, Brazil reached a new low for Amazon deforestation in the first 3 months of 2022, compared to the same period the previous year, causing anxiety and warnings from environmentalists. According to the Brazilian satellite agency, deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon increased by 64% from a year ago to 941 square kilometers, i.e. 363 square miles. Officials in India have announced that from Sunday, all adults will be eligible to get COVID-19 booster doses for a fee, since the incidence of new virus infections in the country has dropped dramatically. So far, 1.85 billion shots have been delivered in the 1.3 billion strong country, with 96% of the population receiving a single dosage and 83% receiving 2. The Health Ministry said in a statement on Friday that a precautionary dosage of the COVID-19 vaccine will be made available to the 18 population or the more than 18 years old population at private immunization centers. A pioneering astronaut mission is on its way to the International Space Station AX-1. A mission by Houston-based startup Axiom Space was launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center on Florida's Space Coast by a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. There are no government space flyers among AX-1 4 crew members. It's the world's first totally private crewed expedition to the orbiting laboratory. And before we wrap up, here is a reminder of our top stories. At least 52 people, including 5 children, have been killed and nearly 100 wounded in a rocket attack on a railway station in Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine. European leaders visited Bucha, a town in the west of Kiev where hundreds of civilians were killed by Russian forces, according to Ukrainian authorities. Pakistani parliamentarians have been violently questioning at the opening of the session, which should see Prime Minister Imran Khan overthrown by a motion of censure. A Palestinian in the occupied West Bank refugee camp of Jenin was shot dead by Zionist forces. 13 other Palestinians were wounded in the attack. And finally, as you watched on news, police used tear gas and water cannons on hundreds of university students demonstrating near the Sri Lanka's parliament in Colombo after Sri Lanka's central bank announcement of raising its key policy rate by 7% due to the economic crisis. That's the end of our news. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.